Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Let me start our roundtable discussion organizing cancer treatment in big cities. We know that we have this session discussion within this great forum, Healthy Moscow. I am honored to be invited here. I'm a moderator of the session. I'm not a real oncologist, and I look at this process a little bit standing aside, so to say. We live in difficult times, and these difficult times mean not political issues. I just mean that today our healthy system is developing very actively, and science. This science, medicine science, is very important for us. It will prevail in the 21st century. We witness now how the paradigm of the whole medicine changes. Earlier, the medicine was aimed at so-called medicine of a big number of patients, but now medicine is becoming more and more individualized, personalized. Also, precise medicine is important. Personalized medicine is important. This is the situation which gives us, which sets different challenges for us. Unfortunately, humankind is not ready for these challenges. We drag behind our breakthroughs and developments in medical science. Earlier we said that medicine only is small, not big molecules which influence on pathogenesis of diseases, symptoms of diseases. Today we have technologies which in some cases can treat even chronic diseases. And now, if we look at the changes of this paradigm, we can see that medicine is a blockbuster aimed at a lot of patients, is replaced by a particular concrete patient. We witnessed coming new technologies, gene therapy, cellular therapy, emergence of new medications which work not only at the genome level but also at the level of metabolics and expression of activities of different genome and metabolic disorders. Today we should speak about this, that 4B, which we are all speaking about. This is the medicine which is being converted into 6B. New technologies should be incorporated in regulation system, payment system, and policy, so-called policy system. It means legal regulations. And today, the Association of European Pharma Producers says that within the next 4 years, we'll have more than 7,000 new technologies, and among them, 1,800 technologies will come in an oncology industry. Oncology was earlier monogenous disease, so now it's being converted into some other disease. Within the framework of one nosologic form, we have different forms, and all these forms need a differentiated approach.
I would also like to stress that according to literature, unfortunately, not all the treatment for cancer and other diseases has 100% efficiency rate. Even if the medicine has cancer as indication, even if the medicine is part of an international or Russian clinical recommendation, its efficiency is far from being 100% one. If we consider cancer, the administration of non-personalized therapy has efficiency in 25 to 40% of cases. For Alzheimer's, it's 30%, arthritis 50, diabetes 57, and so on. All of that means that even if the treatment is correct, there is still the risk of non-efficient treatment. And today, when we are speaking about the implementation of the latest technologies, we need to remember that personalized medicine will dominate in the tactics of patient care. Therapy is becoming more focused, more directed, and safer. As a result, the number of cycles of treatment will increase. More and more medicines will come in an oral form, and that will also impact whether the patients will be treated in hospital or on an outpatient basis. Patients will live longer and cancers will transform into chronic diseases. We know that efficient treatment of cancers is related to many factors. For example, availability of medicines, availability of diagnosis methods, availability of radiotherapy, screening programs. But in all this variety of technologies of diagnosis and treatment, the routing of the patients, the organization of medical assistance starts to play an ever-increasing role. So our subject of organization of cancer treatment in big cities is relevant indeed. How is this matter resolved abroad? How it is resolved in various Russian regions? And how is it addressed in Moscow? These are the matters that we are going to discuss today. You know that in Russia today there are national projects, including in the sphere of cancer. They set the tone for reforming and optimizing the overall medical care system in the field of cancer. This project is implemented at the federal and regional level. So first of all, I'd like to give the floor to Director of the Chief non-staff oncologist of the Russian Academy of Sciences, Ivan Stilida. Dear friends, for me it's a great honor to be speaking first, and I was surprised by the number of people who came here today. I see full rooms at all the sessions. I've been at several sessions. I loved the approaches very much, and I also liked that the rooms are named after our great doctors rather than our great rivers, for example. This is particularly pleasant at a medical forum. So I'd like to say a couple of words about the federal project of fighting cancers. We have quite an ambitious plan. By statistically, we need to reduce mortality from neoplasms, including malignant ones, down to 185 cases per 100,000 people. We need to increase the share of neoplasms identified at early stages up to 63%. We need to reduce the indicator of 1 year mortality of cancer patients down to 17.3%. So the figures are quite challenging. So of course we have some issues, but after the first year of implementation we can see that this federal project presents the following conclusions. This is data for 2019, and the performances show that the project is quite efficient. I'm head of the cancer registry in Russia. Of course, figures are not perfect there, but still These are the figures that are available. We are going to be able to assess the performances of 2019 in April. Overall, we can see that the trend is not bad. The same trend is observed regarding the cancers detected at early stage. It is 57.9% in almost all the regions. I would just like to highlight the situation in the North Caucasus Federal District. Unfortunately, there we have some challenges in recording the patients, both receiving treatment and of those who did not survive the treatment. It is related to some particularities of the mentality of this region. For example, we have one autopsy per 62 deaths there, which is not acceptable. Overall, the data that we have makes us hopeful about further results. But still we have some anxiety, and I have to say that especially at the beginning we witnessed an increase in mortality, and when we saw that the mortality increased, we were scared at first, but then we started identifying. We realized that actually we identified more patients in recent years to compare with the previous years. That is why we have the increase in mortality, and when screening programs are implemented, the mortality will reduce. Another important parameter is the parameter of the share of patients with cancer that have been recorded for 5 years or more. The target value is of 60%, and the cancer service should be able to treat such a big number of patients, and we have some staff shortages in that service. I'm going to go back to this subject later. Speaking about the performance of 1 year mortality of cancer patients, the leaders in terms of that parameter are the Central Federal District, the Volga District, and the North Caucasus District. The target parameter is 21%. It has not yet been achieved by any of the regions, but is almost achieved by some of them. The dynamics of incidence is increasing, but we have to take into account the particularities of statistics and compare our data with that of foreign countries. For example, in the UK, the number of patients is 600 per 100,000, and we have around 400 patients. So that probably means that we have 200 people missing who have just not been diagnosed. The goals of the federal project include, among other things, the re-equipment of the regional medical organizations that treat cancer patients. We also need to organize outpatient care centers to raise awareness and conduct some information and communication campaigns. Although there we don't understand what are the criteria of success. Speaking about the achievement of those targets, in 2019 it was planned to purchase 215 units of equipment for 154 medical organizations. There is a certain lagging behind on behalf of some regional hospitals by that parameter. As for the medical care payment for cancer patients, in 2019, 200 billion rubles were used for that purpose. To compare with the previous years, it is much higher, because Before it was 800 billion rubles. Sorry, 18 billion rubles. If we are to analyze the development of outpatient care centers, we have a lot of hopes regarding those centers. At the same time, we can see that some regions are not actually respecting the requirements that we have. Basically, they are creating an outpatient unit in the existing cancer center. That means that the level of accessibility of this outpatient unit will not be sufficient, so we will have to control the location of those outpatient cancer care centers. Otherwise, there will be no sense in that. We can now do more regarding diagnosis. Screenings are being introduced in many regions. They are still at the implementation stage. However, the parameters are already, the performances are already good. Although, of course, the whole territory of Russia has not yet been covered. Many things have to be done at the level of local hospitals and medical institutions, and the challenge there is the fact that sometimes patients are not completely cured, which is not acceptable. Many cancer patients don't receive enough treatment because they cannot be qualified as patients entitled to free coverage of cancer treatment. So, to conclude, I'd like to say that this project needs to be controlled and curated. The deadlines are not respected in many regions. To resolve that, we are using telemedicine. We are following the severe cases and require reporting. We are also experiencing some staff shortage, and we don't have any vertical reporting system. The slide that I'm showing to you is just a slide that reflects the primary level of cancer care. But radiologists, radiotherapists, chemotherapists are not taken into account in the statistics, and we can also not see the age level of those experts. Sometimes in regions there are radiologists that are 70 years old and that are actually unable to continue working, but there is no one to replace them with, so they continue working. So, according to preliminary data, the measures conducted in 2019 allowed us to get closer to the target values in the Russian regions and in Russia. However, it seems that it will be difficult to achieve the target level of 2024. So the priority tasks of the Cancer Service for 2020 is to resolve the staff issue, to receive enough funding, and to re-equip the cancer services. Thank you. Thank you. You probably know that the current concept of cancer care is based on clinical recommendations, and I'd like to seize this opportunity to thank Andrei as the president of the Oncologist Association. He is the head of the organization that was the only one to perform its obligations to develop clinical recommendations. I'd like to thank my team for that. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. Of course, this is interdisciplinary, inter-institute, and regional cooperation, and we were very pleased with the fact that the result of your joint work was so sufficient. I have the following question to you. We hear a lot that a lot of funds is invested into cancer and cancer research, but still we have no result. Is it naive to think that if we invest in the system, it will yield some result at once? Of course, we understand that there is staff shortage and issues with the equipment, but still, how do you think globally, at the level of mortality and life extension, when are we going to see the results of the projects that we are currently launching? Well, we love to use international experience, especially if it is beneficial for us. So I have to say that our Japanese colleagues believe that it takes 10 years. When they invest something, they get return in 10 years. Of course, they are closely monitoring the projects, and if they see that the project is not working well, they either change the approach or the system or the person who implements the program. There should be monitoring indeed, but experience shows that even if screening programs are introduced in 5 or 7 years, we see that there are some results, and there are more people in whom cancer is identified in earlier stages. So if Japanese believe that it can be done in 10 years, we are going to do it in 5 years, right? Well, actually, we have no choice but to do it in 5 years. And now I'd like to give the floor to Anastasia Rakova, who is going to explain that Moscow is going to do it quicker. Anastasia, you have the floor.
Please dwell on how you solve these issues in Moscow. Thank you very much. I should provide a good quality services for physicians and medical services. So I should increase quality of medical services. Now you know that big cities are famous of increase of the share of elderly people and longer life expectancy. And now you know that Moscow is also a leader in this area. But still we have new tasks linked with this. Now we have half of the million of people living in Moscow above 80 years old. Also, oncology diseases prevail in the elderly people. That's why growth of oncology diseases is unavoidable. Also, the system of treatment changes, new methods appear, and our system also should be ready for this. So that's why we want to develop the system of medical service rendering at all levels, starting from suspicious for the disease and then treatment. We have a lot of advantages in Moscow in comparison with other regions because we concentrate medical service. We have good infrastructure. We have more opportunities than other regions, but at the same time we have also some downsides. For example, we have a huge system of medical service. We have private agencies, private companies, a lot of clinics, and each clinic works in accordance with its standards, its rules, and they are not interconnected. No common standards. And we can't influence on a number of medical organizations, healthcare organizations. We can't influence on their range of services, medical services. Within only last 3 years, a number of medical services grew by 1/3, and they want to be busy with oncology. So it's good, of course, but still we understand fairly well that this is also a problem for us. Because people who suffer from oncology, they don't know where to go sometimes. So some medical institutions treat only one segment, and organizations are not interconnected. Very often we do repeated research. Some research prolonged. Very often we lose patients. We don't know, lose patients, it means here that we don't know what happens with him. We don't know where this patient went, so we made this decision. What are the main principles which we have? So first of all, this is not even our idea. This is the reality which we have to be in compliance with any center. This is a human person, a patient, his needs. We conducted work in all clinics. Big data works very well, and we developed the model which is aimed at the person, and the special oncology help assistance will be rendered only in 6 multiple profile clinics in Moscow. Why do we do this? In this case, we'll concentrate all necessary resources, qualified personnel. Even in Moscow, we lack this personnel, these people, professional people, and let alone equipment and so on. And this will allow us to render more the services of higher quality. And each clinic has to responsible of the specific administrative unit of the city. So some neighborhood, and of course of course, patients can choose where to be treated. Patient can go to any clinic. That's why we only profile leading federal clinics can render these services for Muscovites. But at the same time, for the first time, we have not only rights but also some obligations. We have obligations, and only in this case we can have rights. People can choose, and also we should be responsible to treat patients using all necessary standards and deadlines. And also we should be responsible of the state of population regarding this part of this type of disease. Why did we detect? How many patients with this or that type of cancer we detected? How many years did these people live? 5-year survival and so on. And what about their checkups? What is here important? We tried to organize this in interactive model. In the structure of this multi-profile clinics, we involved all centers. Outpatient clinics also were included in this multi-profile clinics. The profile departments of clinics also will be included into this multi-profile hospitals. Moreover, also, in the same case, we should have the link between clinic and this multi-profile oncology center. Routine should be compulsory and can be done only in this format. Also, what does it mean that it should be consistent? It means that people should be sent not only from the clinic to multi-profile hospital. All examinations should be done considering already the examinations which were already conducted. We should have the direct digital connection between all these centers. We should have one common database between these clinics. And then healthcare clinic or polyclinic should have its functions, and then hospitals should do something different. We have different zones of responsibilities. Yesterday we signed the decree, and it will come into force in the second quarter, and it's written there a list of diagnostics procedures, and these diagnostics should be conducted at the stage of clinic, and then patients should go to hospital. Professionals at the clinics can make appointments in for oncologists, there are different resources here. On the one hand, we can use capabilities which exist in this outpatient center as a part of this multi-profile clinic, or it can send patients to a clinic back. And now we have research, PET, computer tomography, and some other tests. I think it can motivate professionals in clinics. Now, next thing. All centers should organize morphological services. We bought equipment for these centers. This is your responsibility to make these people work well, because morphological thing is very important. But this is not enough. Also, we need to develop infrastructure, because environment where patient and doctors are should be different. This environment should give hope, should give confidence that people will be treated, cured, and patients should be inspired coming into clinics and hospitals. We'll try, but now it's not like this, but we'll try to correct it. We took the whole year to think about this, to think about standards, how to arrange this internal space in clinics and hospitals to make them more comfortable for patients and for doctors, because now our buildings don't give any inspiration. We developed all standards, and for today we are at the stage of design. For example, the center of we already start to reconstruct it. Some buildings will only design, and also with our colleagues who represent Oncology Association in Moscow, we spoke about this a lot. Where the centers should be, and this outpatient centers, should they be also at the territory of hospitals, of multi-profile clinics? And all colleagues said yes, it's important, they should be at one territory. So in this case, we find space at the territory of multi-profile clinics. In this case, it will be really interconnected. The same doctors will work with these patients at the outpatient clinic and also at hospitals. It will be like closed cycle, and we'll use everything what we have. The next direction, this is digital direction. We'll speak now always about it. We believe that this is our future. All these centers are important for us to understand about the incidence rate, its localization, and how can we utilize all this in our healthcare centers. We analyzed data which we had within the last 2 years. We have trends on incidence rate, and we distribute this between different institutions. It's important to build the system in this way. Oncoconcilium should be obligatory, which can define the tactics of treatment in this multi-profile centers. We don't always have closed cycles, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and so on. Surgical interventions, pharmaceutical interventions. It's more difficult with the radiation therapy, but we have this. We split these approaches into parts. We also buy something from the market, some capacities, but we'll have one digital counter, and tomorrow we'll also speak about this. Our city will be closed within this counter. And regarding oncology, this is our experiment. Next year, all our counter agents at the market, federal private companies, regarding PET, computer tomography, and conclusions regarding radiation. Treatment should be digitalized, and they should pay. We will have all in digitalized. We'll have appropriate tools, and then we should treat patients in modern conditions. We need also to have the support system of doctors' decisions. Only in this case will work in a proper way. We also developed a packet prescriptions which are needed for diagnostics procedures, and these packets will be piloted soon in some clinics, and then for each stage, for each element of the process, we'll use federal protocols, and we'll have this all in one system. Of course, a physician can deviate from standard, but when the system becomes transparent, we can understand where what happens and whether this deviation is necessary or not. This will be a transparent model which can allow us to make decisions, and if there is a deviation from this model, we should understand why. These are our approaches, and I hope that we'll also experiment, and if something's wrong, we'll maybe correct this. Now everybody is pleased with our activities. We are now going into other directions. We'll have 4 other types of localization. Since the second quarter of this year, we'll shift to a different system of medication provision. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues. I don't think that there are people in this audience who think that this is not important. So when we go to different subjects of our Russian federations, they say that Moscow has a lot of money. But you should be envious of Moscow not because it has a lot of money, because it has such a vice governor who knows all issues, all questions. I know Anastasia very well. It seems to me that she is already an oncologist. She is a real professional, and actually. When I speak, when I communicate with the subjects of Russian Federation, with the Ministry of Healthcare, here we can see the absence of political willpower. Because we have the tasks from the government, from the president, and this should be fulfilled. We have to know key problems, key parameters. We should arrange the system in the way it should be arranged. And now Anastasia we realize how you do this. But now, please imagine that it happens so that today you are responsible not only for Moscow, but for some other regions, for the rest of the country. Are ready to answer the challenges. Now, I would like to speak to give the floor to Ivan Zakharovich, chief oncologist, they work with regions. He knows the situation very well. Ivan, please, can we dream about this? About what Anastasia spoke, and do we have an example where the subjects of the federation with this passion can make a good service? Do we have some other examples like this? So this person-oriented system, consistent and tracking of patients. Can I quote you, Anastasia? Hello, dear colleagues. Happy New Year. I congratulate you on this holiday. I wish you this year could be fruitful and peaceful for all of us. I will answer a question not directly, but indirectly. I can say that I agree that we have tasks now, and the government gave us a lot of instructions. We work now at all these goals, and now we can see a lot of problems. Again, Vitaly, also you asked about this, and many people ask about this. The program started, and we have also financial investments, but where are the results? Where is here the outcome? But we speak about the program, and we don't remember that the program means target indicators and some steps through which we can reach this. But we can reach all this when we have some support, when we have the structure, the foundation, and only anti-cancer service can be this support.
And we are now making steps towards that, and we are building a cancer care service, a federal service. This is quite a system, and it is a living system. Anti-cancer system is not just a list of institutions that deal with cancer. This is a live system, and unfortunately it's not self-regulated. It has to be regulated and controlled, and one can envy Moscow because it started at least doing that, and something is being controlled and governed in this system. Similar examples of management, I mean highly professional management, can be found in the Russian regions, but I cannot say that they are numerous. It's not the majority of the Russian regions. To finish my introduction, I'd like to highlight the following. When we are developing an anti-cancer program, we face quite clear challenges. Here you can see those challenges. The first one is accessibility and availability. It's about the creation of cancer outpatient centers. First of all, there were a lot of opponents of this project. Even myself, I did not understand this project very well initially. But one needs to understand that accessibility and availability in cancer is not just about the location, it's also about the referral of the patients. And when we are measuring distances on the map together with the Federal Cancer Service, we see that this is what we are missing. We need to understand that in a number of cases, it is not necessary to follow the guideline of having one outpatient center per 100,000 people. The most important thing is to have good accessibility. In a number of cases, if the system is well organized, if a certain service level is provided, it could be possible for a patient to come to an outpatient clinic to quickly get all the necessary care and then go back home. Another issue is the staff shortage. Here, the centralization of medical assistance plays a huge role because sometimes it can compensate even a staff shortage. It has the potential of increasing the quality. It makes the resource use more efficient. We cannot but agree with that. Actually, in the regions, we see that centralized services in the Russian regions are few and far between, and it is a problem, the problem of comfort for the patient. Another issue is the implementation of hospital replacing technologies. This is one of our key targets, and we are following in that direction. We are planning to introduce some hospital replacing technologies. And many of the regions are gradually transferring to this system. Another important problem is a systemic problem, that is the lack of differentiated approach by regions in the norms of the program of state guarantees. In other words, the quotas for hospitalization are the same for all the regions of our country, which is a strange situation because the morbidity level is different in different regions. Sometimes this is a 3-time difference. This problem has already been raised and discussed in the Ministry of Healthcare, and this issue will have to be tackled. Another issue is the amount of the free or reimbursed drugs provision. The amount of funding between different regions of Russia is sometimes 100 times and more. Of course, these figures cannot be the same because the regions differ. The quality of life is different. These regions cannot be the same, of course, but the difference of 100 times and more, of course, is not possible, and we should strive to reduce it and improve it. Next slide, please. Here you can see an example of what I have been talking about. You can see here that 14% of the Moscow and Moscow region residents receive 55% of beneficial drugs, and as for the other regions, 86% of the population receive 45% of reimbursed drugs. I would like to make an example by comparing two regions. Take Krasnoyarsk region and Novosibirsk region. The population is similar. The density of population in Novosibirsk is higher than in Krasnoyarsk region. Number of cancers identified for the first time is similar. The number of institutions that provide specialized care for such patients in Krasnoyarsk region, there are 8 of them, and there are no specialized clinics. So the referral is organized in such a way that all the patients are treated in cancer hospitals. In Novosibirsk region, there are 7 specialized cancer clinics and 9 non-cancer clinics, where still cancer patients are treated. Of course, there are some issues regarding the selection of treatment methods for the patients in clinics not specialized in cancer. And if we say today that we need to respect the same clinical recommendations, it doesn't mean that these guidelines are being followed, because during inspections we find quite a lot of cases where these guidelines are not followed. I'm not referring to the experience of everyone, of course, but sometimes we see quite abnormal situations. Now, the amount of services provided in cancer centers. In Krasnoyarsk regions, there are 80% of such services, and in the Novosibirsk region, only 35. Then, share of planned surgeries in non-cancer clinics. In the Krasnoyarsk region, it's less than 5%, and in the Novosibirsk region, it's around 35%. The centralization of the cancer service is taking place in Krasnoyarsk, in contrast with Novosibirsk. In Krasnoyarsk, the number of hospital beds is also optimized, and there are more beneficial and attractive conditions for staff. Novosibirsk is missing all of that. As for the performance in terms of the implementation of the federal anti-cancer program, Krasnoyarsk region is respecting it by 97%, while the Novosibirsk region only by 74%. As for the hospital replacement technologies, they are well implemented in the Krasnoyarsk region, while they are not sufficiently used in the Novosibirsk region. We are often talking about screening and primary care, but only screening is not sufficient. The system needs to be integrated, and there have to be high requirements to all the aspects and stages of this system. If in one of the chains of this link standards are not respected, the whole chain will suffer. Telemedicine is used in the Krasnoyarsk region and is not used in Novosibirsk region. In the Novosibirsk region, the whole system is not really integrated. And now this issue is being discussed, and they are planning to build an 800-bed facility that would also integrate a round-the-clock hospital and a day hospital. That will be a new state-of-the-art cancer specialized clinic. So the conclusion is that in the Krasnoyarsk region, where everything is well implemented, the results should be better than in Novosibirsk. But we have only the 1-year mortality parameter that is better in Krasnoyarsk than in Novosibirsk. It's 21% in Krasnoyarsk and 24% in Novosibirsk. This is also an issue that we need to tackle while we are working in the regions. It's statistics. Sometimes we are unable to correctly assess our position. Andrei said that when regions started to classify patients correctly, when they started taking into account patients that were not taken into account previously, at once when regions started to show the reality, the mortality rates increased several-fold. So these are the issues that are common for our regions and that are being dealt with by the federal centers so that we can build a correct system based on modern information technologies. That would be a federal anti-cancer system bringing together all the Russian regions. But we still have a lot of work to do because there is still this regional healthcare principle that we are following. And this goes in opposition with the integrated federal system. We will probably not be able to eliminate all of those contradictions, but we need to try at least to do something about it and work together with it. Thank you. Good afternoon. May I ask a question? Just a minute. Ivan, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. I, as a person who is working in the healthcare system, can say that such an analysis is the example of how the Scientific Research Center for Cancer has to control this situation. There are many research centers that do not understand where they are, and this comparison represents a certain benchmarking example, and this is one of the purposes of our national projects. But I would like to highlight one thing. We have the state guarantee program, and indeed, in all of the regions, all of those parameters are more or less the same. It's not the problem of the state guarantees program. Once again, unfortunately, that's the problem of the regions. There is the state guarantee program. There are some guidelines about how to adapt the state guarantee program for the Russian regions based on their development level, morbidity level, and so on. It's just that the regions are not currently using this norm. It's easier for them to copy what is featured in the state guarantees program, hence all the issues that were mentioned. Yes, I agree with you. These are regional issues. Yes, indeed, they are just afraid to take up some responsibilities because someone may check them and they would prefer to refer to the state federal program, which just represents an average. I cannot agree with you. Actually, it's not always like that. We have a federal fund that requires all the parameters to match the state program, and none of the regions can go beyond those requirements. I have talked to many governors of regions. They cannot change their system, so I would like to protect the regions a little bit. There are a lot of talented and adequate people in the regions who understand the situation very well. Our legislation is not very flexible and doesn't always take into account the difference between the regions that actually exists. So I urge you to help the regions, to provide them more freedom so that their regional particularities are taken into account. Anastasia, we are going to send you some recommendations where this can be done. But I agree with you that the federal requirements are sometimes very strict, and that creates an issue for the regions. Dear colleagues, we are now speaking about the National Anti-Cancer Program. That's the program of prevention and treatment of cancer. It is clear that Russia is not the only country that is following this path. Today there are many countries that are creating national anti-cancer programs at the national level and at the EU level. So I'd like to ask our guest, Jean-Baptiste Méric, who is director of the French National Cancer Institute, in the Department of Public Health and Organization of Medical Care. We'd like to ask him to share the experience of France in creating such a program. Was it efficient? What are the results? And what were the KPIs? You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here today to discuss this question, and I have seen in your presentations that we have very similar issues. Yes, the remote is coming. Thank you. So just a few figures to give you information about France. We're a small developed country with and quite an important life expectancy, and cancer is the first cause of death in France, with nearly 400,000 new cancer patients each year, and half of the French mortality due to cancer. And we have today 3 million people who live with cancer or after cancer, and it's really important for public health. Cancer in France is due to identified risk factors, mainly tobacco and alcohol, and our public policies regarding prevention are targeting mainly those two factors, even though nutritional and obesity are increasing and require more attention. There was a political decision at the beginning of the cancer plan. It was President Chirac, pictured here, that decided to create the first cancer plan in 2004. His idea was that a leading cause of mortality should be a real concern, and that there was also a premature mortality with 1/3 of deaths occurring before 65-year-old, and he wanted this to be treated. So we have 3 cancer plans. We are at the moment finishing the 3rd one, and there will be in a few months a 10-year strategy, because we have considered that 5 years is probably too short, but we can discuss this. So one of the first decisions in the first cancer plan was to create a French National Cancer Institute that I represent here today. This was really important because, as you said, we have to implement cancer plan and we have to monitor them. We have to follow what really are the realities near the patient, near the health professionals. What are the difficulties? What are the regional discrepancies? So this is one of our missions. This is the first one, to coordinate cancer control activities, whether it is prevention, screening, cancer treatment, political issues. We are the coordination center, and even though we are not doing a lot of things directly, we coordinate everyone. And we also try to initiate and to follow up innovation and to give the lead, so that every center, private, public, in prevention, in treatment, is supposed to follow us. And we are organizing the healthcare system, and we are advising the healthcare ministry and the research ministry to promote knowledge and good practices. We had 3 cancer plans, and I will quickly give you the outcomes of those cancer plans. In the first one, we established important changes in oncology practice. Multidisciplinary decision became mandatory, and organization of tumor boards, and the centers had to create coordination to build this, because we had many centers, most of them with only one treatment modality, surgical centers, chemotherapy centers, and they had to work together in order to create the tumor boards, to implement personalized decision for the patient, and to record it in an information system where these data are shared and now are coming back to our center, where we can globally analyze those data. And it was also an important plan for the patients, with personalized care program, which is a personalized information given to the patient before the treatment, with schedule of treatment, with benefits of treatment, with risk of treatment, written for the patient in a personalized way. So this was really important for changing the oncology practice. This plan also created the first coordination of research funding, because we had different agencies that were funding different type of research, fundamental, translational or clinical, and we unified this, and we began in prevention to decrease smoking prevalence. However, this first plan had poor monitoring and did not address healthcare inequalities and regional discrepancies, as you have observed here. During the second plan, we decided to centralize activity, and as you see, there were more than 2,000 hospitals and facilities authorized to treat cancer, and 5 years after, there were only 900. And this work is ongoing, because we do think that centralization has really increased our quality level. Quality control was also implemented in radiotherapy, and we built structures to care for specific population. Rare cancer networks, pediatrics cancer networks, geriatrics cancer networks, and oncogenetics. And in this second plan, we tried to build links between the research world and the healthcare world, and to give more space to translational research. And for this, comprehensive cancer centers were funded, and we developed personalized medicine by funding special platforms for molecular testing, funding it outside of the social security funding, but this was extra funding to develop personalized medicine, and it worked, and it increased also the accrual in clinical trials. We observed an increase in 5-year survival for men, for women, but I show here a difference between two periods of time quite far away. If we had looked from the beginning of the cancer plan to the end of the first or the second, the benefits were slight, and 5 years is probably a short time to monitor a cancer plan. So that's why we are pushing a 10-year strategy at the moment. What are we doing at the moment in the third cancer plan? Considering that healthcare networks are now stable and quite correctly organized, I will show you that in big cities it's not always the case, and that we have increase in survival, we are pushing our actions in prevention. And we had several coordinated actions against tobacco, and we observed 1.6 million less smokers in 2 years. That's really important, and we are quite proud of this result. And we also get into secondary prevention with organization of screening for cervical cancer. We had for breast cancer and for colorectal cancer, and now for cervical cancer, as organized screening. Of course, there are also individual screenings, but those three are organized. We are at the moment having a problem not for the structure of healthcare, but for the funding of healthcare and for access to innovation, with cost increasing, and for instance the CAR T-cells treatment costing more than 300,000 euros per treatment for one patient are really a problem we have to deal with. We also, in the third plan, try to address survivorship and psychosocial consequences of cancer. We created the right to be forgotten. That's the no need for a cancer patient to declare to the insurance company that he had a cancer before, and that as soon as his cancer cured, he can access to the same product of insurance to build his enterprise or to by his home. There is no discrimination for this patient. And we are funding quality of life measures like physical activity, like nutritional support, like hair prothèse, and all that can help survivors. But there is still a lot of work ongoing there. We had difficulties during these concept plans. First, we have not observed really important progress for poor prognosis cancer. And as you have seen in the survival curves, some like pancreatic cancer, like liver cancer, we had no increase in 5 years survival, even though we implemented modern treatments and modern organizations. One important point that I stressed in the slide is that we had difficulties to implement actions at the regional level until the third cancer plan. And in the first and second cancer plan, we had important regional discrepancies, as you have noted here in your country. And we had to change the governance and the management of the cancer plan to better integrate the regions. We had no nationwide registry, and today we still do not have nationwide. Only 1/3 of France is covered by a cancer registry, and it's probably something that we can gain from your experience, because registry should probably be one key point of our organization. We had no data collection, but now we have created a health data hub, which is supposed to collect all health data from every patient, and cancer is a model to organize the healthcare in the country. So cancer data are the first to be collected and to be linked with social data, with employment data, for instance, with inequalities data, and we hope that in the coming 2 years we can not only take the data and analyze, as you said, the deviation to protocols, for instance, but also to have a better statistical view of what happens in the country, who are the patients, who are the risk factors, and region per region to be able to personalize our governance. We have still some difficulties in prevention, and for instance we have a low HPV vaccination coverage. Some European countries can have more than 80% of the population covered, and we are still nearly to 25%. We have also a persistent and important drinking of alcohol. Wine is a cultural product, and we have difficulties to make people change their habits. And one important problem, we are not so bent to treat patients. We can cure patients, that's good news. But the bad news coming is that we have a lot of survivors, and these survivors have a lot of problems that we have to take care. And 2/3 of patients are living with physical, psychological or social sequelae, and we have to take this in consideration. Just to give you a few hints about the structuration of our cancer fight, Ministry of Health and Ministry of Research are giving the global objectives, and we have regional health agencies that organize specific fundings and deployment of actions, and they are directly engaged to do the link between the hospital centers, primary care, and the national level and the National Cancer Institute. What did we do to get the regions to consider the cancer plan as important? During the third cancer plan, we delegated some actions directly to the regions, and some were in joint actions between the National Cancer Institute and regional health agencies. And we gave them instruction to produce a regional cancer roadmap, and I know you have quite the same here, and to describe their actions and their regional specificities, because we wanted them to address the regional discrepancies and that they can decide to push more on several factors, prevention or care organization, whatever they want, but to tell us what they want to achieve the objectives. And we also included the regions in the piloting of the plan, and we had monthly meeting with the directors, and part of the director's salary was based on cancer objectives. One example of a region, considering the title of the session and big cities. So Paris is our biggest city, 2 million people living inside Paris, 12 millions in the surrounding region, which makes, as you see, more than 50,000 new cases of cancer and more than 16,000 deaths from cancer each year. And in the region, we have 142 authorized cancers to treat centers. Remember, I told you we have 900 for the whole country, and we have more than 100. We have cancer coordination centers. What is cancer coordination centers? As I told you, most of the hospitals have only one modality of treatment, so they have to coordinate. And if you see here this map, which is inside Paris, there are more centers because a lot are not represented. Why? Because there are university centers and they coordinate separately because they have multimodality platform treatment, so they coordinate the patient pathway inside their organization, but they are probably not completely able to coordinate with others. So, problem inside Paris, we have experts. That's really a good thing to have experts, but an expert knows better than you what you have to do. And experts in university hospital, they want to teach the National Cancer Institute what should be the national policy. And of course, each university hospital has an opinion regarding the national policy and what it should be. So we have difficulties to implement coordination inside Paris. But let's look just south of Paris in Essonne, which is a small county, and consider this. So colors are representing centers working together. And as you see, for a patient living on the west side, it can be difficult to choose whether it's going to the blue or to the green centers. And for instance, there is only 2 radiotherapy centers, one in the extreme north and in the blue, and one in the extreme east in green. And whether the patient has chosen to go in one direction or other, it can be a complete difference for his treatment. But as you see, there is no completely coherent organization, and patient could be quite disappointed to be treated in one part of the department and then another part. And we have to work better on this, because today the cancer center coordination are based mainly on acquaintances between the health professional and not really on evidence-based. What is the important thing that this can teach us? If we look at esophageal cancer and surgical treatment, we have 60% of hospitals treating less than 3 patients a year. Even university hospitals are represented here, and on the contrary, 10 hospitals provide more than 64% of the activity. However, we know in the international literature that concentration can give us some benefits, and that's what we see in the Paris region. So we are now conducting a national policy to improve such figures based on minimum volume activity to authorize a center to perform a cancer surgery. And if you look, same Paris region, you can see that in radiotherapy there are a few centers with high volume. What a great thing! But if you look better, you cannot suppress the small centers, because we have delays and we have centers in the dark color are more than 1 hour drive from Paris and from the radiotherapy center. So that can create people that refuse to go there for the treatment. So at the moment, we are trying to work on these priorities to have better prevention, to support quality of life after tongue cancer treatment, and to promote the fight against poor survival cancer. And as I showed you, for esophageal cancer, to fight against poor survival will probably be mainly directed by concentration and organization of networks to treat patients. So we hope we are going on concentration and decision sharing, and that we are coming more and more to make the clinicians, the researchers, and surgical, medical, radio-oncologists to work together for the benefits of our patients. Thank you for your attention.
Большое спасибо, Мэрик.
Thank you very much. I will ask you one question. Today we speak about oncology, and oncology, this is a very scientific intense sphere. There are a lot of new technologies and a lot of development in medicine is linked with oncology. How do you respond to these challenges which science and industry give to us? Because sometimes we have very expensive technologies. How are they financed? Does the healthcare system finance these expensive technologies? Do you have some other solutions?
Some elements. First elements, cancer costs less when there is no cancer or when there is low stage cancer. So this is one part of the 10-year strategy and the prevention. It's not only to spare people for being sick, but it's also a funding element, because if we have less cancer, we can take the money to treat those who have the poor prognosis cancer. Secondly, we have probably some gain from patient-reported outcomes, and we are trying to build for the 10-year strategy an information system based on patient reporting, because we have several models that show that we can increase survival. For instance, in a small town named Le Mans in France, we have a radiotherapist that had developed MoveCare application, which is an application that showed an increase in survival when follow-up of lung cancer patients after surgery, because the application is able to detect a recurrence before the doctor and recurrence that can be cured. So this application will be reimbursed like a drug in a few coming months, and we can prescribe it as a drug would be, so that the patient will leave the clinics not with a drug but with a smartphone and the application in order to detect the recurrence of lung cancer and to treat it. And we really believe that such implementation can help us and can spare money, because let's be clear, we should keep money to pay drugs that will cost more and more. So of course we are trying to negotiate with pharmaceutical industry, but innovation will come, and CAR T cells are increasing, and now they are more specific, and there are 10s coming, and we have to pay for this. So if we want to pay for this, we have to spare money, and we have to organize and concentrate our structures.
Thank you very much indeed. I thought that you would be speaking about your evaluation of innovative drugs at your level, but we're running out of time. I realized that you experienced some issues indeed with the arrival of new technologies. I don't know whether I will answer your question, but I recently went to China, Shanghai, and I went to a large Shanghai Hospital. Shanghai is a huge city with a population of more than 20 million people, and there is another city nearby. They told me, we're going to drive you to a small town of 8 million people. And we went to a hospital for 2,500 beds. That's a large cancer research center. And the Chinese are also facing the new technologies challenge. By 70% it is addressed by the insurance companies, and 30% are paid by the patient. At the entry of every office of every doctor, there is a terminal on the wall, so one has to pay by credit card, and only later the patient will be able to enter. That's not a way for us. Colleagues, let's continue our work. We have all said that the National Cancer Project poses a lot of challenges in front of the experts and the state. All the speakers are speaking about the same thing. They are saying that the staff issue is one of the most significant ones in the organization of medical care in general. So I'd like to give the floor to Nick Guldemont, Associate Professor of Integrated Care and Technology at Erasmus School of Health Policy and Management. You have the floor.
Спасибо, добрый день.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Russia, and thank you very much for this very rich discussion. I work in different cities in Sao Paulo, 22 million, in Beijing, in Shanghai, and Tokyo, as well as Russia, which is the most beautiful one. I think if you look to the different cities and the challenges, not only in oncology, but in many other areas, is that they still have a problem with the integration of the services. So still they are dealing with healthcare systems who are single service focused, often very institutionalized and not so much taking care of more primary care facilities and social care. While we know this has a huge impact on quality of life and experience of people of quality of care. While we know that better outcomes, better quality, better experience come from integrating all these elements of the healthcare systems together in a single service. Despite all the plans they have, despite all the technology and the finances they put into the system. So what do we know about improving quality of care for people? Is that it starts with the needs of people, and often they are very simple. I want to return to work. I want to have energy. So often they don't talk about tumor growth, tumor factor, or any other biomedical aspects. That means it's not that it's not important. No, it's very important that we maintain our quality of medical care. But if we look to the overall outcome, we should carefully look in how do we anticipate needs. And it is also better for us as doctors and the experience of people. So quality of life is something we have to focus on how can we together try to achieve better outcomes. Of course, as mentioned with the other speakers, a more personalized plan. But what we see is a lot of discussion in personalized medicine, in personalized medication and technology, while this doesn't often contribute to better quality of life. We know that it increases healthcare expenses, while there's a lot of doubt about the overall contribution to better outcomes. So we should carefully look on where to invest in. We know that including social services, taking other aspects in cancer treatment can improve these outcomes. So integration, collaboration is key for improvement, and we can not only solve it by combining data and a more personalized medication, tumor killers. So a lot of discussion in these big cities, also in Berlin, in the Netherlands, in the UK, is about how we change our collaboration and services. Yesterday, your President Putin, mentioned important things. He also mentioned this aspect of quality and experience of people, about health inequalities, and just also to show that our clinical element is only contributing for quite a small part in the overall outcome of health in populations. Work by Talov in the previous things. Also, we try to think a lot in the individual in providing care. While we know that the patient system with family, friends, and if we include them in the treatment process, also helps to improve the quality of care. So we really have to think how we integrate medical care with social aspects such as the work environment, if people want to return to work, want for all kinds of responsibilities in the family, in the social life. So these are the elements which is also a key in oncology and in chronic conditions. Another aspect is that thinking about improvement of care and outcome is also a matter of thinking about patient journeys. How do diseases develop over time, and how this interaction throughout the disease process contributes to better quality. And this means, again, that the collaboration between how we collaborate as medical professionals, as well as how it connects to the informal networks within communities, for example, the church, the employer, etc., is important if we think about improving cancer care pathways. If you look to the indicators on what makes integrated care possible, there are different levels in the vertical integration between disciplines in oncology, where information sharing obviously is very key to make collaboration work, shared consultation, shared coordination. And although it seems very obvious, in daily reality it's very difficult to achieve. We can see it in the universities, we can see it in the clinics, we can see it in ministries, across sectors, across departments. It's really difficult. So we did a study about 2 years ago across 37 countries in their readiness to provide integrated care services. And the Netherlands, on these indicators, did really well. And you could say, okay, the Netherlands is doing really well, but if you're really looking to improvement of cancer care, we're still facing really issues. And if you take, for example, the treatment for brain cancer patients with high-grade glioma, we invested the last 20 years in new pharmaceuticals, in data collection, in all kinds of therapies. But in 20 years, when I worked as a young clinician, nothing much has happened in patient outcomes. What we know is if we improve more the social aspects and support for these patients, it will improve outcomes. And it's not only illustrative, these problems for brain cancers, but many other disease areas, including oncology, female with breast cancers want to return to home, or male, etc. So this is a thing to think about. So Russia is not ranked very well, but there are examples also in Moscow, where you have very good examples to learn from. So my key message is, if we really want to improve care in oncology, we should have an integrated approach, and this is very complex to achieve. So it comes down to a good strategy, combining all these elements of technology, of data, of standards, of indicators. But the real challenge is how to make this a reality. It's the responsibility of governments, of board of directors, but it also comes to you. Are you ready for change and for collaboration? So, in this challenge, you are not alone. And so almost every country has the same sort of problems. In Europe, in the Netherlands, in China, in Brazil. So we know the ingredients for change starts at a local level, where we have to integrate all these elements of social care, medical care, all the elements. So this process of change, we do it together in the communities, but we can learn from all kind of examples. Russia has a special role in Russia as a sort of leading environment to make this change happen, but also we can collaborate internationally with examples like Jean Baptiste and other countries. And although we have sometimes political sensitivities in healthcare and professionals, we are very much open to learn from each other from these examples. And thank you very much to provide me this much broader perspective on care. Thank you. Спасибо.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much, Nick. You know, since you made the accent on the multidisciplinary approach, I wanted to ask your opinion about the following. How promising are the approaches that are well known in the Netherlands and in Sweden that are called value-based healthcare approaches? They are focused on pay for performance and some other things. What can you say about that? How can they be used in classical examples such as prostate cancer, for example?
Thank you very much for this interesting question. So I should say the value-based healthcare discussion is a very important discussion, but I think it's very dominated by indicators and outcome as such. While the real improvement is in the process and in the redesign of services. So it's attractive idea from policymakers or insurers to think, okay, if we have the indicators and we measure, then the whole system will improve. And that is not the case. So there's almost no evidence available on success of value-based healthcare, except maybe some examples like the Escalapios clinic in Hamburg, but it's quite specific. So I think besides the discussion on indicators, which we need, we also have to look to performance indicators and how you improve the process. So that's what we currently do in the Netherlands, in Sweden, some other countries. We much more thinking about how to redesign the service using indicators on, okay, what goes well, what goes wrong, not only outcome but also performance indicators, and use this as a sort of continual feedback of learning how to improve. So I think we should also take the responsibility that to take this more integrated approach and also have attention for how do you redesign and improve the process rather than just only looking to the outcome indicators.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, now we still have some time left so that those who have questions could ask them. Do we have any questions to our speakers? Well, I have an impression that there are no more questions to discuss in cancer. Colleagues, please don't rush. We are still continuing. May I ask a question? My name is Larisa Lemishevskaya. I'm from Moscow. Please introduce yourself. I said I'm Larisa Lemishevskaya. Who are you? I'm from Moscow. I had my friends and dogs suffering from cancer. I have been treating my dog from cancer for 5 years already, and so far it's been a success. We all do a lot of internet research. And in St. Petersburg, they are treating by freezing the tumor. But Moscow is not using that. That is used in some other cities, but not by Moscow. I cannot understand why it is like that, why people are using some obsolete means such as chemotherapy or surgery. These were the approaches used for my dog. And I understand your question. May I ask it? May I answer? As far as I understood, the situation in Moscow is not as good as in other cities. Answer. Well, I'm not now answering as a moderator of the session, but as a general director responsible for the implementation of some technologies in the institutions. I can say that the situation in Moscow is better than in St. Petersburg, and my foreign colleagues will confirm that before any technology, be it cryo technology or some other technology, can be used in practice, evidence should be provided to the healthcare system, be it federal or regional. If this data is sufficient from the clinical point of view and from the economic point of view, then these technologies, be it medicines and so on, will be launched in the healthcare system. Since I am now at the threshold and in the vanguard of new technologies of Russia, I can tell you that so far we did not receive any such proposals. So perhaps there are developers that invented something interesting, but for some reasons they haven't yet announced that within the official healthcare system. It's not because Moscow is bad and St. Petersburg is good. If St. Petersburg is paying that within the federal insurance system, that should be the matter to be considered by the prosecutor's office or the accounts chamber. No, they are doing well. Well, we cannot have such a debate. Another short question. When my dog was told that it will die in a month, and my dog is still alive, that's just a case. No, my dog has a sarcoma. Biopsy was taken. Maybe you can discuss this issue during the break with the oncologists. Perhaps they will get interested and they will be willing to use this technology in their centers. Colleagues, any other questions, preferably not about animals, because we are speaking about people today. Okay, so, dear colleagues, let us move on to the next part. Every victory or future victory has its particularities. So I'd like to seize this opportunity of having a large conference. We are now having some events dedicated to cancer in big cities, including in Moscow. The Moscow Healthcare Department would like to recompense the winners of the Specialist of the Year contest 2019. I hope that our winners are here. And the first winner is Maxim Kubirov. Please give him a round of applause. Pediatric oncologist, head of the pediatric department of the Morozov City Clinical Hospital. Dear colleagues, we'd like to introduce Galina Dudina, hematologist, head of the hematology department of the Moscow Clinical Research Loginov Center, Department of Healthcare.
Галина Анатольевна, пожалуйста.
Galina, please, you are welcome. And also Ekaterina Breus, oncologist, the head of oncology department, Moscow City, City Clinic 218. Dear colleagues, I hope that we all join this congratulations, because thanks to these people we can speak about our success, and Anastasia also can speak about our plans and our hopes. Ivan, you wanted to comment on something. As a conclusion, dear colleagues, I would like to say a couple of words. I was born in Abkhazia, in Sukhumi city. This is multinational city. And we lived in a big yard. We so one neighbor meets my dad and says in Russian, I can show you, I can open you one secret. You know this news, from yesterday. So our government is retired. It means that Veronika Skvartsova, at present, she executes her obligations, her responsibilities, but we don't know about the further destiny of Veronika and who will be the head of our industry. But I believe that all our oncologists are interested in building up modern oncology service, and they have to be grateful to Veronika and thank her for her personal effort in this thing, in building up oncology service in Russia. She participated personally. She was the head of this. She was the head of this movement. I believe that we have to thank her, and in the future we would like to work with her as well. And colleagues, if we don't have any further questions, I would like to join Ivan and say that it's essential for our healthcare system to be systematic and continuous. If some centers change, institutes change, we should not forget what we had, what we have had, what we have worked at. And Veronika's contribution is enormous into this system, and I really hope that the system cannot be built within 1-2 years. Of course, maybe we'll have quicker results, quicker outcome, but what we are building now today, this journey, and I hope you share this with me. This journey is systemic and interaction of documents. This is the only one way possible. You are mostly oncologists here, and you understand this very well, that we can't stop this. We have to continue our course. And we have also mentioned that the national project, federal project, have their further KPIs and indicators, but it was already said that in parallel with the system in the implementation, our dear specialists, our representatives of the Ministry of Healthcare should correct these KPIs annually, because every time the system will need new events, new measures, and every year it can be different, and we should evaluate the efficiency of the healthcare system differently each year. And as Anastasia says, we have the same approaches in the ministry, in the healthcare system, as it is in Europe, abroad. But we did not have this, we did not have this system, this control of patients as it's in Europe, tracking of patients, systematic things. We should work at this, and it will show the results. I hope that we all will monitor this, and let's wish success of healthy system. Good luck in big cities and in Moscow in particular. Thank you very much.